And we're going to hear from our marine campaigner, Shannon Hurley. So really, without any further ado, I'm going to jump over to Shannon.
Thanks, Nicole. And I definitely think you are definitely ocean literate. You're my two bobs worth. But also thanks, Sarah and Prue, for your talks. They were really inspiring to hear. So I just wanted to spend a few moments, and hello, everyone. Just wanted to spend a few moments really bridging the gap between citizen science and the campaigning work that VNPA does, and just kind of reiterate how valuable that knowing what marine life we have down there and the contribution that all of you make into citizen science actually goes directly into helping protect our marine and coastal environments that we all love. So just a little bit about sort of me and my role, or actually what led me into it, is that, yeah, I've been with VNPA now for about a bit over 3 years as a nature conservation campaigner. And I'll tell you a little bit more shortly what that actually means. But I didn't always start out to be sort of in the campaigning and advocacy space. Before that, I was actually out seeing and exploring our marine environment and working as a dive instructor and being inspired by the ocean, and also hearing a lot of stories about how it had changed over the years and how, due to climate and human impacts, that things weren't always what they used to be. And so I began to get really curious about that. And then seeing that for myself, I then became of the mindset that I really wanted to help advocate for the tools that would help us to be able to manage these areas in the best way that they could be, that we all love to enjoy. And so that's essentially what I'm doing now in the campaigning and advocacy space, which is advocating for all those tools and proper management and the policy and the structures and the governance, which don't sound very sexy, but they are actually the frameworks, which is what decisions are made that actually can make or break sometimes our marine environment. And sometimes these decisions are often made by governments and things like that. So it's really important that their decisions are sort of based on really good frameworks and governance structures and policy and all that kind of stuff. Because that's actually directly what goes into protecting all of these areas all the time, and also a lot of community who speak up to protect the places that they love. And so really, if we look at sort of that context and then look at citizen science for a moment, sometimes to advocate for these places that we love, we often need to know, and it's obvious for me to say this, but I think it's really good to reiterate, is what's actually down there. What is down there? And that's where citizen science comes in, because you all being the eyes and ears out there in our marine world, because let's face it, I'm not doing it as much as what I used to be doing it, and I miss it. So we need eyes and ears out there telling us what is down there, and particularly when it comes to new species that we haven't known before, or even improving our understanding of the interactions between different species. And so I wanted just to give a bit of an example where you may have heard of before is the proposed project for AGL's gas import terminal for Western Port Bay. So I think, obviously there was a lot of concerns about that, if that went ahead, the impact that would have on the marine life in the whole of Western Port Bay. And so really our job was to really engage with the decisions that were being made at the government level and what different marine life and marine habitats were actually going to be looked at in terms of what impact this project would have on those. And so we really need to put in and alert the government to our concerns that we had. And part of that was actually, one, is engaging experts to do some analysis of what different habitats are there and look at what was really needing some extra attention from this project going ahead, and what actually needed to be assessed in terms of its risks to these different species. But part of that is also really looking at the trends in those areas, and also that's where citizen science comes in, because the observations that you make and the data that's directly collected actually feeds in directly to than what we can actually feed into the government. And so, for example, we ran a BioBlitz day for Western Port with Kate and Nicole, and I'm assuming many of you actually came to that as well, where it was citizen scientists getting out and looking to see what was there. And we actually took lots of videos and got your, I guess your inspirations from the day, because this can directly feed back into government, which can't be out there seeing this directly for themselves as well. And so because you're out there submitting data, that data actually directly feeds into the Atlas of Living Australia. And for example, in my position and many others who are also working in this field as well, directly go to these websites and we look and we see, okay, what are the list of species that can be found there? And when we're actually making recommendations and putting forward our concerns for what we're concerned about with particular projects going ahead, we're actually directly feeding in like particular concerns that we might be having, or areas of focus that we want the government to actually be looking at. And so and the data that Reef Watch collects actually directly goes into looking into, it actually directly gets submitted to the government, and for a lot of different processes where they write reports. So for example, and I won't get into the specifics of it, but you may have heard of the State of the Environment report. So this is a report that comes out every few years, and it sort of like a top line snapshot of how our environment is tracking. Well, there's actually a dedicated one for the marine and coastal environment, which is currently being developed at the moment. And so Reef Watch data is directly input into that. And so when that report is actually developed, they're actually looking directly at the data to see the trends of like fish populations all across the state, and that can be reported on. And then that's what we can actually use to advocate for better decisions to actually be made about how our marine and coasts are managed. So I just wanted to, and also the other point to make is that the state government loves citizen science and connecting people with nature. And so there's often money floating around and grants like that to be applied for. So that's just, I guess another just reassurance I just wanted to make, because sometimes it can be really difficult to sort of, especially when you're behind a computer, to know directly the impact, or, not being, contributing directly to citizen science and actually not knowing where your data is going. So I just wanted to give some reassurance that it all makes an impact and is directly used to contribute to how our marine and coasts are managed and, and protecting what we love going forward.
Thank you, Shannon. And it actually is really important, I think, to remind everybody that like we're not just sending you out there to, yes, we're sending you out there to have a bit of fun and to take photos of fish and nudie pranks and all that kind of thing. But for those of you that are wondering, where does this all go? Yeah, for sure. Places like the Atlas are things that marine managers and politicians and advocates can actually check in on. And so, it is really important to hear that it is actually helping make some sensible decisions about managing our marine environment. So thanks, Shannon.